Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Stars Align with Matthew John, the show where we talk about the stars with the stars. I am so excited for today's guest, Neil Gaur, the founder of Portal to Ascension. And Neil is one of the most fascinating characters I have ever met. I cannot wait to get into a bit of his story. But Neil is so fascinating. Portal to Ascension, if you haven't checked it out, one of the absolute best platforms for New Age information, starseed information, anything fifth dimensional ascension related. And I just can't wait. So let's welcome in Neil Gaur. Neil, welcome to the Stars Align.
Thank you so much, Matthew. So good to be here with you, brother.
Amazing. So, first of all, tell our audience, I'm sure there's a few people out there, probably in the minority, but I'm sure there's a few that aren't familiar with Portal to Ascension. And I'm
hmm
absolutely going to link all of the relevant links, website, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you got in my description box below. So check that out if you're watching. But Neil, tell us a little bit about Portal to Ascension, please.
Yeah, well, so to tell you about what Portal Ascension became is kind of like the journey of how it became in the first place, and I like to talk about my story. Basically, is I was raised Hindu, right? I was raised,
Mm-hmm.
and I really, for a while, I just when I woke up to this awareness, like 2001 is when I had my like major awakening. I would kind of judge being raised Hindu, and I would say like I was a atheist Hindu just because I wasn't like actually like there is no God. I was just a child. I never even thought about is there a God? Is there source? What's out? I just did what I was told. I followed traditions.
Mm-hmm.
I would sing bhajans, what are basically hymns. So I'd be in temples singing hymns, but I never really thought about what the end result was. And it recently, in the last couple of years, I'm glad to say that I shifted from being the victim to being an atheist Hindu to realizing that because I was raised Hindu, I was never told it was the only way. The only, and because it was, I wasn't told the only way. We celebrated Christmas. We watched movies on Moses, movies on Jesus, and my parents told me like all this stuff existed, which led me to Indian scriptures speaking about other religions, saying that different religions come in different areas of the world at different times because we're all different and
Mm-hmm.
we all need to be approached differently on how to connect to source. So that started my exploration, and I started realizing that there's a lot of similarities in these religions. I was told that monotheism and polytheism both evolved separately because I went to Catholic school for 1 year in England before I moved to the US, and they were teaching this, and but I was seeing all these connections and similarities, and very soon I found that Krishna and Christ is it's more than a coincidence that they both have Christ in the beginning of the
True.
name. It's almost exactly the same person. Krishna was born to a virgin mother, had a carpenter father, died with this died with an arrow in the same side that Jesus had a spear in him, all these connections. So I started wondering, is Christianity a remake of an older religion and Jesus never existed in the first place? This was like my first thought. Now I
I,
realize,
I, I have thought that many times that Jesus never even existed. I'm not really
right,
that sold. I talked to Victor Furman about this, and you guys can check out that episode in the archives. He's very sure, and he had a very convincing argument. I'm still not
okay.
totally sold, though.
So I've now come to the other side where I believe he did exist,
Okay.
but I do feel that a lot of the stuff that we put on him are fabrications, and many of them are fabrications from what's it called, a Roman emperor that
Hmm.
basically took on those traits and put his likeness on them, and then also a pope in the 15th century as well. They infused his likeness and his what he did into the Jesus story. So I started seeing these connections, and so I started wondering, well, is there a root of all religion? And as I started looking at the root of everything, I was going older and older and older, ancient, more and ancient. And I'd be at Panera Bread with the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the New Testament, the Old Testament, drawing parallels. And I found
You,
the
you
Sumerian
you would
scriptures.
you would leave Panera and choose a different book each day and start knocking on people's
Knocking on
doors,
doors
right?
to convert him.
See
So
see which book sold the best.
I would have my bread bowl of soup, you know what I'm saying? And I would be there drinking my coffee and, in between classes and stuff, I was going to college. I'd basically be looking at this. And then I found the Sumerian scriptures and realized that almost every religion in the world, especially the Abrahamic religions, took everything from this source text. But the source text, not to go deeper into this, a lot of people probably have already know about the Sumerian scriptures, but basically
I
talks about
don't really. I mean, as much as you want
okay,
to give, you know.
cool, cool, cool. So the first revelation was I saw the Epic of Gilgamesh. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, this guy Gilgamesh is going around the world, and then he stumbles onto a person that survived a great flood in his travels. And the guy that survived his great flood was Upta Mishnim, which is AKA Noah.
Mm,
Wait a second. The Noah story comes from Sumerian scriptures thousands of years before the
whoa.
oldest religion in the world, the first culture that ever started doing written language and is supposed to be the cradle of civilization. And this story was orally passed down for thousands of years before that, right? So why is Noah in this story? And I started realizing almost every ancient culture in the world had a flood story, and it was very similar and all dated back to around the same time, around 13,000 years ago.
The end of
And
Lemuria.
yeah, and the Younger Dryas is what they call it, the Younger Dryas period, where there was a collision and a fall from grace, right?
Right.
So I started the Noah story started making me look deeper, and I realized that in this text there were certain things that were verbatim from the Old Testament. For example, we were created in His image and His likeness, right? But instead of in His image and His likeness, it says we were created in their image and their likeness without any him or a male or female connected to it. And it said
Was this the
Elohim.
Anunnaki?
Yeah, it was the basically it said the Elohim created us in their image and their likeness, and that was interchangeable
Wow.
with the Anunnaki. So right now, I'm still like the jury's out for me as to whether the Anunnaki was one group of beings or if the Elohim were a collective of beings and Anunnaki were one of them. Maybe
Hmm.
you channel Syrians.
I
Anything
don't
about
know. I
Syrians?
can I can ask them. I don't know.
Well, ask them.
I don't know. I've become really fascinated with the giants, the Nephilim.
Mhm.
Huh?
Nephilim are the offspring of, so that was another story. So the fallen angels, okay, the fallen angels, these beings came down to earth, Anunnaki. There were two tiers of gods on this planet. There was the Anunnaki and the Igigi. The Igigi are all the demigods you see, Hercules, stories like that, right? The Anunnaki were all the other gods you see, like Zeus. And the Igigi did not have all the powers that the Anunnaki did, but they were more powerful than the humans of Earth. They're the ones that said, "Hey, we don't want to do this labor anymore. We need to genetically mutate the hominin on this planet in order to create a species that can help us with all this work." And then the hominid on this planet supposedly revolted or became sentient. Whether they actually revolted and or just became awake and they were just allowed to be awake at that point, we don't know. And the Anunnaki left, but they left the Igigi on the planet. The original story of the fallen angels. There were abandoned extraterrestrials on our planet. They started mating with the daughters of men, and their offspring were the Nephilim. All of this from the Old Testament was from the Sumerian scriptures, but talking about it through ETs. So, anyways, that's what started my deep research down the rabbit hole of 2001, 2002. And that continued until 2008. Went deep down into the conspiracy theories. And then 2008, I had a spiritual awakening. And that's when I created
By
Portal
the
to
way, me too. I pretty much my awakening happened at the exact same time, 2008. And someone actually,
Congratulations.
and a good friend of mine, Shima from Conscious Life Expo,
Yeah, I know her.
she reminded me that, oh, your spiritual awakening began when Pluto entered Capricorn. I'm like, you're right.
Yeah.
Which is, and you and I are both. I didn't have a look at your chart yet. We might do that later if we have time. But you're a Scorpio like myself, and we're both Plutonian in nature. Pluto becomes very important to us. So it's interesting to
Mm.
know that we both had our awakenings at the exact same year. It's pretty
I
cool.
know a lot of people who had their awakening in 2008. Like
Really?
when
Okay.
when I started my journey in 2008, and a lot of people say, "Well, that's when it happened to me too." Well,
Makes sense.
it was like my second awakening. It was like I was in conspiracies and darkness and following the bloodlines and the Illuminati and secret societies for eight
That's where
years.
I started too. I read every David Icke book
Yeah,
in
yeah,
like 2008, 2009, 2010. That was my like launching point, and then I got into the more spiritual star
right,
seed stuff,
exactly.
etc. Yeah.
And going through the darkness to see the light. I mean, I feel that's a great way to
I
basically
agree,
have full
actually.
spectrum awareness. Have
Yeah,
a full
I
spectrum.
think getting hit with it, right in the face at first, pie in the face, like everything's a lie, everything's bullshit, the whole system's rigged. There
Straight up.
really is an Illuminati, and they're way more evil than you could ever imagine, right? I just think like getting through the tough part and then realizing, oh, on the other side, because like now we both can look at that and not really get triggered by it because we know the truth of reality is that the light is always stronger in the long run,
Exactly.
and it's meant to be. It's the duality, the polarity of the 3D experience on Earth, and
Uh-huh.
it's kind of cool in a way, right? I think it's kind of cool. Like we came to this planet that really is a prison planet. If we kind of look at it objectively, it kind of is a prison planet.
Yeah.
And we're here to break free from the prison. We're here to
Right.
break down the prison walls, right?
It's a very amazing game that we've created for
Right.
ourselves,
It
where
is. Yeah.
we forgot that we're playing the game. Something I like to say often is like, well, we're actors on a stage that forgot we're acting.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but then we also forgot we're the directors and the script writers.
Yes, we are.
And that's what the awakening is, realizing we're the actors, script writers, and the directors of this. And once we get to that place, this is scientific at this point. We become the creators of reality because everything is a holographic quantum field that
Yeah.
we can reprogram and code in order to be better for all of us and give us the experience that we really want to have on this planet.
Scorpionic, deep question here. Tell
Yeah.
tell us is something that was a shadow aspect of you and you reprogrammed and now it's like gone and you're completely new in that way.
All right. Well, when you say that, the first thing comes up is the most traumatic experience in my life which was being molested as a child.
Okay.
Like from
Are
age
you
three to
comfortable sharing?
yeah, yeah, I've
Okay.
shared many times, completely freely. So it's from age 3 to 7.
Okay.
Created a shadow on my entire life, my experiences, my interaction with women, shame around sexuality, my energy
Hmm.
as a man, you know, and it was a woman that did it to me too. So just like
Hmm.
and family members. So it really kind of just like was this overarching energy of my entire life.
Hmm.
And I started Portal to Ascension because I had this awakening. And then not until in the plant medicine ceremony in 2016 did I realize why I started it. And it was a subconscious way in order for me to figure out how to heal from this trauma.
Hmm.
And when I became conscious of what I was doing, then I started going deeper and deeper into it. And then I realized like I create events on information that I'm interested in, but I was doing that unconsciously, just being like, oh, this is cool, this is cool. But when I realized that that's what I'm doing, I became very much more intentional with the events I created, the retreats and experiences, and started creating experiences for myself to heal from this.
Hmm.
That were events that I could also attend my own events and be a part of,
Yeah.
you know? So I would
Wow.
say that it's not 100% like completely gone. There's still insecurities that come up around masculinity because of it, right?
Hmm.
But a major component that I have been shifting out of just in the last few years would be the shame energy around being a
Hmm.
sexual, healing the
Wow.
shame. Mhm.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's a really vulnerable piece. I appreciate that. And what a powerful and dark but powerful way that your soul set up your life in
Right.
order for you to eventually find where you need to be, right?
The Scorpio energy, bro, is very sexual in
It
nature
is, yeah,
and
it
deep.
is.
And so I realized that connection. And so, like, quite a few years ago now, I came to a realization that the duality on Earth gives us the opportunity to become one of two things: the master or the victim.
Hmm.
And so a lot of experiences happen and traumas happen to us, and we can become the master of the lesson of that when we learn to transcend and heal ourselves from it, or we can fully immerse ourselves into the victimhood of it
Right.
and just be lost in that forever. So because I had realized that quite a while ago, I'd been on this journey of mastery, of seeing, like, knowing that, well, what is my biggest wound? Well, my biggest wound is what happened to me in childhood.
Hmm.
So there may be something in me where as I'm healing this, I will eventually become a teacher to others on how to heal it. And that's on the microcosm for myself. If we take that to the collective, that's what Earth is doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're going through this deep, deep, like this has been the Earth is kind of traumatic in many ways, and not for everyone. I got to put that disclaimer for people who say I'm fine, but we're also healing a lot of galactic trauma, and I
Yeah,
feel as we're doing this on Earth, and we do this with amnesia, mind you,
you're right, right.
with like the cards stacked against us, we still find the light. That's freaking amazing. And as we heal that, then we become the teachers maybe to other civilizations on how they can do it as well.
And you mentioned, God, there's so much there. Thank you. You mentioned that on Earth, like as a collective, that we're healing a lot of galactic karma. I'd actually love to get into that deeper.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your knowledge and your information on that because, as far as I know, a lot of souls came from Orion's belt,
Yeah.
after the Orion Wars. Like, I guess because Earth was at such a low 3D experience that it kind of resonated with the level of consciousness necessary, to be the victim of the type of raping and pillaging that whether you want to call them the Anunnaki or the reptilians or the Draconians, right? When they supposedly went around and just like blew up, and just some planets they just blew up, like in the Empire Strikes Back, or like the Death Star blowing up Princess Leia's planet. And then other planets they were just invading and enslaving the people and raping the women, and just like horrible things, right? And then so many of those souls, as far as I understand, like after they died, they were done with Orion's belt. Like there was this mass exodus from Orion's belt to Earth, and also not just Earth, but also Mars and Venus as well. And then a lot of those Martian, Venusian souls ended up on Earth. And like of the 8 billion of us that are here, I think there's a pretty large percentage that actually our souls had experiences in Orion's belt and were victims in the Orion Wars, and we've come here to heal that. And it can take thousands and thousands of repetitive lifetimes to finally heal that. Some lifetimes experiencing genocide, and some lifetimes experiencing being on the wrong side of history, being a Nazi, being a genocidist, right? What are your thoughts on that? Is that something you've heard? Or
Yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, we would need 3 hours to talk about
yeah.
this whole thing. So, okay, so I'm doing an Orion conference next year in March, right? Because
Hmm.
Orion doesn't get enough attention. And there's just too many layers here of what to speak about. I like don't know where to start. The reptilians don't get enough information and people speaking about it, about the diversity of the reptilian races. Only around 5% of them are polarized as negative. Most of them are neutral. Okay.
Really?
Even even the connection, even the dragons, we don't think of dragons as reptilians, but the
Right.
dragons are ancestors of all reptilian beings. It's
Really? Okay.
yeah. So we're in the year of the dragon. I did a dragon conference last year. I'm doing a dragon conference this year. And I had a regression where I went to the dragon realms and I saw the dragons helping with the birthing process. And
Oh.
halfway in the regression, where I started asking, why am I seeing this? They took me to the second star of Orion. And what I just had a regression through a year before with Geraldine, where I went to the same star and planet, but I didn't know it was in Orion until my second regression, where I went to freaking Orion. And they said to me, well, we want you to know that all of the reptilians, even the negative ones that have sorrow in the heart for what they're doing to you, are our offspring and children. If your
Hmm.
child commits a crime, and is that child still your child, and does it hurt you as deeply, and do you still love that child? You know
Hmm.
what I mean? And they want me to figure out with my platform on how to bring perspective, because the reptilians are an external manifestation of the shadow work that we're going through on this planet, the darkness.
Right. The
We
only reason they're still here is because it's basically just like the reason we have war right now in the Middle East and in the Ukraine still, right? These are just showing us the evidence of where we are as a whole
yeah.
vibrationally, right?
So they're playing their role perfectly.
Right.
But now, how this connects to Orion? Because I was so curious about the Orion Wars as well. And my friend, her name is Rebecca, but she goes by Lori Net. She's from the Neturu tribe in the second star of Orion, but she's not like regression. She's like a straight up, even has some genetic anomalies in her hands and her flexibility
Hmm.
that is just not normal on Earth. And she has memories of Orion that go beyond whatever. I've ever heard from anyone. And she talks about Orion now. So on Earth, it's like there's an experience that happened millions and millions of Earth years ago, and we're still working it out on Earth. Whereas Orion has actually moved into the future and is a harmonious, peaceful area with beautiful, lush planets,
Yeah,
all these things
yeah,
of living
yeah.
beings,
I've
right?
I've seen that as well. That it's so different now in Orion's Belt than it ever was. And like after all those souls left, I think the first step was all those souls that were the victims actually leaving and going to our solar system or Alpha Centauri or other lower dimensional solar systems, right? And the
Mhm.
rebuilding process, and now it does feel like they're at the highest level ever vibrationally.
Right. So the galactic trauma, I feel there's most of it, I think, is Orion, but it's almost like it happened from the beginning of the first human template, from the moment we left the constellation of Lyra, because the humans were master geneticists, the human template, and they were going around, they were hybridizing themselves with all types of beings and incarnating all types of experiences, like a kid in a candy store, so excited about all what they could create. And sometimes they also hybridize themselves with reptilian beings without the consent of reptilian, the oversoul. And that was the original disturbance. The disturbance of what eventually came to Orion was also the DNA wars. It was a battle over genetics. And after millennia and millennia of wars, and a lot of them didn't even know why they're fighting anymore. They just didn't like each other. In Orion, there were humans fighting with on the negative side as well as humans fighting on the positive side. It wasn't just reptilians against humans. Now,
Hmm.
what Lori had shared was that there was actually an invading force from outside of our universe that came into Orion. So this is new information that she shared to me, and this invading force and actually was non-personified force before it became personified in reptilian beings. It was like an energetic field, and this was the energy and the beings that started destroying planets and destroying worlds. And there was a portal on, well, the Ryan's belt in general has the largest portal in our whole galaxy, and it's a portal to lower densities and lower dimensions, like you had mentioned. So my first regression with Geraldine, I was on this planet, didn't know where it was, and I was a portal keeper where I was going through this portal in order to go to Earth and collect data to rebuild a technology that was stolen from my planet. And what was stolen was the Crater God technology. Somebody took that technology and left and went to Earth with the Crater God technology to create life, and it was a negative force, right? So that's what I saw in her regression. So now we're in Bridget Renee Holiday's regression. I'm on this planet and I start seeing like, wow, I'm seeing the same planet. Something has to happen here. Something happened with the reptilian energy. They invaded this planet and went through this portal. And I saw myself in the regression in a battle trying to protect the portal, and I was overpowered, and they escaped through the portal and came to this dimension. And then many humans afterwards started following them through the portal to incarnate onto Earth to basically try to heal and fix what had been damaged, right? So this is a long story, so I'm going really fast. And then the third experience was last year during ayahuasca. All of a sudden, I'm on the freaking planet again, looking around and I'm on the planet, and in front of me is the portal, and I realized that the guy in Thor that's the gatekeeper of the portal in Thor
No,
in the
but I'm
original.
sure my audience, a lot of my audience
Yeah,
does.
so
But
in the original Thor movie and the other ones, there's a rainbow bridge. They call it the Rainbow Bridge, and it's the Stargate that goes from that dimension to other lower densities because they're in the utmost dimension. And I was that guy. I was the gatekeeper with my whatever weapon or whatever I had on me in order to protect the portal. And I was overpowered, and they escaped through the portal. And the name of the portal was the portal to Descension.
okay.
And so basically, I was the gatekeeper of the portal to Descension, and then I came down to Earth, went through the portal after the technology was taken, and created a portal to Ascension in order to basically help people get back to the higher realm.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, that's like a short synopsis of what came from that.
Wow. Yeah, I'm trying to just piece this all together. There's a lot there. Okay, one thing you said I want to ask about.
Yes,
You said humans come from Lyra?
Yeah, the Prism of Lyra.
Can you explain more? I'm very curious.
Yeah, so this is so basically, have you heard of Lisa Royale? Have you ever read any of her books?
Did she write Prism of Lyra?
Yeah, she wrote that book.
Okay, I have her book somewhere here.
Yeah.
Somewhere on my
So
shelf amongst myriad. Yeah.
that was the first time I ever got introduced to that concept. And then I connected with other researchers and then also channelers that have all validated that. And then through my own meditation practice, I've seen things similar as well. And so the story goes, there's non-personified force in the void in the center of our galaxy. And then they decided to, whenever energetic forces become sentient, they have the original blueprint of source within them, which is creating in their image, experiencing themselves other than what they are in more multiple forms. And this energy became sentient, and a human template was created in Lyra. And then for eons, they lived in Lyra, but there was three planets in Lyra. So they evolved, they went and inhabited different planets. And then over time, these planets started becoming very isolated from each other and weren't in agreement with each other, and wars broke out in Lyra.
Hmm.
And because these wars that broke out in Lyra, the that's when the humans and different tribes from different planets started venturing out to the rest of the galaxy and going and inhabiting other
Okay.
planets. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And what in our solar system were do you think it's true that there were planets before Earth that were like Venus, Mars, Maldek, like
100%.
they were populated first?
Yeah, exactly. Well, so I don't know about the timeline on like when Earth was first inhabited because we're now talking about Homo sapien compared to other hominids, where there are other hominids on the planet, right? And if you read the Bringers of Dawn by Barbara Marciniak, like one of the Palladian like original texts,
Hmm.
the Palladians call themselves the original Earthlings, right? And this is also spoke about in the Prism of
That
Lyra.
that this is why I'm so curious about saying humans are from Lyra because we
Yeah,
look so similar to the Pleiadians, and there's so many channelings that the Pleiadians essentially created us. So I'm really, and I don't know the answer.
yeah.
That's why I want to hear.
So we do an annual conference on the Pleiades as well, and the Pleiadians are one of the most spoke about group of group of stars in every ancient scripture in the world, right?
Hmm.
Like the Seven Sisters, the Hopi, everyone talks about it, right? So the original template of the human came from one source, and then everything else was
Okay,
a
so
genetic
and is
variation.
that template like ubiquitous throughout the galaxy?
So the template has well, I'm not sure what
Like,
the
are there versions of the hominin throughout the Milky Way?
yeah, exactly.
Okay,
And
so that's
the
the
first one
original
was
template we're talking about from Lyra, from the Lyran
yeah,
Gate.
and those were like human bodies with feline faces.
Right, because like even the Syrians look kind of human. They just don't have hair. They have very big eyes. They don't really have ears like we do. Like there's so
Yeah,
many like the Cassiopeans and the Hyadians and I can think of even the Yael. Like there's a lot of different beings in the Milky Way that look humanoid,
yeah.
right?
Exactly. So we're all ancestors of the original template. So whether
Okay,
we look closer to the
that makes
Pleiadians or look
sense.
closer to the Lyrans, we're still ancestors through millions and millions of years of genetic variation. And now the Pleiadians are more of a direct connection to Earth because they are the ones that came and seeded us, but their ancestors go beyond that. And as you go further and further back, the ancestors probably look further away from what we look like now than the Pleiadians do to us. So the reason why they say that the Pleiadians original Earthlings is that they were before the specific Pleiadians that was involved in our seeding and this seeding were on in the Pleiades. Supposedly they were on Earth, and they left Earth when the Lyrans and the Syrians came here at one point. And maybe you can speak about this. That the Lyrans and Syrians in the Prism of Lyra, it says that the Lyrans and Syrians came to Earth in order to create another species of hominid on this planet. The Pleiadians were here and they left because they didn't want to interact with them anymore, and they went and inhabited the Pleiades, this specific tribe of Pleiadians. And
Hmm.
then, but the Pleiadians had already been genetically working on the genes of the modern hominid on this planet, and there was supposedly like a firewall in our genetic code. And the Lyrans and the Syrians were not able to actually alter the DNA without the assistance of the Pleiadians. So all three of them began working together in order to create one of the seedings of humanity. And that's pretty much the synopsis of the Prism of Lyra.
Okay. Look, I'm like I think I'm kind of like you where I just want to consume like
Yeah.
every possible resource and book out there and then kind of make my own inferences. I don't ever take anything as complete truth necessarily face value, but I also don't want to discard it. I
Right.
don't at this point think the Syrians had anything to do with us literally genetically. But
Mhm.
we shall see if I find anything moving forward.
Right, right. And let me ask you this, because the question is like something that I always wonder is how many races of beings exist in that place? Because when we just say one group of people, are we talking about the whole entire star system, or are we speaking about a specific tribe or civilization from
It's
that
a good
star
point.
system? And then could we just be connecting with that specific civilization that we're connected to? You know, I did a lot of events with my friend Brad Johnson, who channeled the Dronus, Syrian being, and he was getting information directly from them. So were there other interactions from people from that civilization, right? So many
Yeah,
things have
no,
happened
it's a
in the
great
universe.
point.
It's
Yeah.
almost it's kind of, you can't really track back our history completely on point because so many different people. This tribe made a left turn instead of a right turn. You know what I'm saying?
And
All
you know,
from
like
this.
for me, my point of like research and trying to figure everything out has been about the soul origins. Like that's one of the, you know, my specialties is reading where people's souls come from in the stars, but their souls. The genetic piece, the genetics of the human race, I have not really delved. That's more of your
Yeah,
realm. And
right,
that's
right,
why I
right.
love learning about this sort of stuff. So I don't want to say, oh, the Syrians just because they haven't told me or whatever that they weren't literally involved in our genetics. I don't know. I
Right.
do believe that whales and dolphins are literally from Sirius, that they're literally genetic copies that were placed here by the Syrians to help basically hold the Syrian codes here on Earth. But people, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because so I would say that there's Syrian souls on Earth right now, right?
Oh yeah,
You
of
talk
course.
about
Souls,
that.
yes, yes.
So if you actually look at the Prism of Lyra story, and I'm with you as well. Like basically, I've been in this since 2001, so it's thousands of different pieces of information combined in my own consciousness with my own experiences,
Right.
all coming together, right? And this actual story of the Prism of Lyra was that they were needed to create a human template to incarnate the souls into. It was all about, so I'm not even sure who was responsible for the genetic manipulation of the actual physical being, but the goal was to incarnate their own soul essence into the human being to have a lower dimensional experience.
But and I understand that, but at the same time, my understanding at least is that you can come from anywhere in our galaxy or outside our galaxy and have a human experience because there's an intermediary. The intermediary is the fourth dimensional astral field of Earth where you enter
Mhm.
into the reincarnation cycle. And once you come here as a soul and you're like voluntarily a part of the astral realm, you can pick any human or
Yeah.
animal
So
body.
the
You can
genetic
pick an animal body if you want to have that experience one lifetime.
Right. So the genetic part of it was that's true. So as again, just going back to that story, like staying on that for a second, is that they were trying to change the human template so it was a body that they could do certain things with in the physical realm.
Okay.
They weren't just trying to choose to be an animal and then live on four legs.
And on many Syrian planets, there are civilizations of mer people. See, I could see the mer people, and I actually feel it's a yes that the mer people were literally like genetically, literally Syrian.
Hmm.
But I don't know about the land people, or I don't know about what you're saying. But I'm not
Yeah.
discarding it.
Yeah.
I don't
And we
know.
have and we're all just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I
But
know.
one thing that I feel has happened is that there's been multiple seedings of humanity, and many of these stories might not actually be direct connections to Homo sapien. I
Yeah.
would say the Anunnaki story in the scriptures, in the Sumerian scriptures, they give you rough datings, and it dates back to around 300,000 years ago.
Oh my
And
God. Yeah.
we've now found out that Homo sapiens probably came around 200 to 300,000 years ago. So a lot of things that we're finding in our own genetics and our own history connects to that story. And then there's also two things within Darwinism that don't make sense, right? Everything
Okay.
else seems to evolve, but there's two specific things. The first thing is blossoming flowers. Okay. Flowers started blossoming in the fossil record in a period of days, from not blossoming to just all of a sudden being able to blossom all over the planet and and create more life. And then the other one is that there is no transitionary fossils from Homo erectus to Homo sapien. There, it seems like we were one species of beings, and then all of a sudden we were Homo sapien.
Hmm.
There, as long as they've been trying to find this, right? And I just came out with a poetry book called Galactic Origins, and in that I have a whole section on the linear science of we cannot see that we became Homo sapien from anything. All other species on the planet, we can see the natural evolution. So it looks like that maybe we were naturally evolving. And then if you look at what mainstream science says about when this jump happened, is also in alignment with the Anunnaki story that says we're genetically manipulated 300,000 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Wow. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you look at these Lyran, so let me just say this: so Lyran story and Syrian stories, those look like even more ancient stories. Like we've been doing this on this planet for a long time. So I'm thinking like those stories might not even have direct connection. Might be our souls, we were still there having incarnations, but maybe not this specific species that we are now.
Hmm. Do you, how many like delineations of the human race do you think there have been on Earth?
Well, the Indian scriptures say that there's Ursa Major has seven stars, and those seven major stars, and those seven stars will connect to the seven sages, and there were seven seedings on Earth, right? Other ancient scriptures, like even the Greeks allude to it, say that there were seven seedings on Earth from the Pleiades. Each of the Pleiades seeded this planet.
That seven seems
I
to be
don't,
a really important number in the
yeah,
universe, doesn't it?
I know. So I don't really know. Like, I mean, that's just that one thing. Maybe there was I really have no idea, man. That's actually one of the questions. I even did an article. How many resets and how many seedings have we had on this planet? And that whole article is just questions, like,
Yeah, I love it.
yeah.
Why do you think that Earth? See, I've found is that Earth is incredibly unusual in so many different ways, and one of them is that there's so many people here. Like for the size of our planet, it's really populated, even though there's vast areas of the planet that are completely unpopulated still, right?
Right.
But 8 billion is a lot of people, and that number is likely to grow and will hit 9 billion at some time in the future. And okay, so why do you think Earth is so populated? And also, the other unique
Mm-hmm.
thing about Earth is that everyone looks so different.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of like you look at the Pleiades, there's much more of a homogeneity. Is that the word homogeneity of
Yeah.
the way they look? Same with most Syrian planets. Same with Arcturian planet, etc. It's a very unique expression of the human race, which is a beautiful thing. And I think it's one of the cool. I think it's one of the cool parts about being here is that like I'll never forget one of my most powerful plant medicine experiences. I was all alone. I was in this campground and like it was like 4 in the morning, and I went into the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I like held on because I saw my form shift into a black man and then a Chinese woman and then an Indian man and like all these different people of different races and different aliens too.
Yeah.
But what do you think about those two questions?
Well, you asked a third question in the beginning, and I'm trying to remember what it was.
Okay,
Do you remember
so
what?
so why so many people on this planet, and
Oh,
why
yeah, yeah,
are
yeah.
we so
Wait,
diverse?
wait, wait, wait. I forget how Scorpios are the best freaking asking questions.
Yeah.
Perfect questions, bro. So I would go with why so many people on the planet. All right. And I would go with lots of information back this up, but I would say that Dolores Cannon probably has a really good outlook on it. That well, first of all, there's two things maybe. Maybe it's at a point where a lot of souls are trying to clear their karma, clear their
Oh
energy
yeah.
field in order to
Yeah,
go
yeah, that's right. We're taking in like all the souls from the galaxy that need to clear their
right.
karma, right?
Right, exactly. And then I've also come to realize that I say this in a loving way that Earth is a mental institute for galactic trauma. We're like
Yeah.
the definition of insanity up in here, dude. We're doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. And then also what Dolores Cannon said after the nuclear bombs went off, there was a call out to the universe saying that, and even Congress is like getting into this now, that basically nuclear energy splits the quantum field and affects other realities and
Right,
dimensions.
right.
Not only can it kill us, but it can also damage other realities. And there was a call out to the universe afterwards, but the prime directive of non-interference is still in place. So the only way these souls could come and actually make a change was to incarnate on this planet. And now we have this infusion of souls that are basically here to clear themselves. And as they're doing that, they're operating as a galactic trauma clearing vehicle for the universe.
Makes
And
sense.
they're here to help change the planet. So, and then do you want to comment on that before I get into the next
I
question?
do, and I actually want to ask you this. There's a
Yeah.
lot of channelings, channelers, people in our industry, et cetera, that over the past 50 years have been predicting, like, oh, there's going to be this mass exodus of people, and like the Georgia Guidestones, which, by the way, I don't even necessarily think those are from the Illuminati. I think that may be some bullshit trickster that created those. But regardless, a lot of people think that the population is going to crash and there's going to be these calamities. I've always seen it and been shown actually the opposite, that we're going to keep growing.
Yeah.
And I
I,
just wonder, what do you think or see or feel?
okay. I'll talk about that real quick as a side note, because it seems to be that we have cycles of time that's connected to the precession of the zodiac, the great year, around 25,900 years or so. Different civilizations say different times. There seems to be a devolution and an evolution of consciousness. And as we're devolving, we have wars, people die, there's plagues, there's an
Ah, yeah,
exodus, right? As
yeah.
we're evolving, we remember. And this is also archaeologically proven. Our cranial capacities at that age, 13,000 years ago, were bigger as well. And
So
parts of our
more
brain,
people come during the golden age times, essentially.
well, yes, yes, yes. And then as we in those ages as well, our ability to remember, so we don't need to communicate through writing, we can say things and remember it. But then that remembrance actually, so oral tradition, that remembrance actually carries over to telepathy eventually, and the remembrance also connects to our past lives and our incarnations, right? So what now to answer the question that you said, my opinion is that we're attempting to break free from that cycle so that we can continue evolving into the future and then move off planet and to start going and interacting with other beings, because we've kind of been a victim to that cycle for a while. However, in every single age, there are those that break away and break free from that. They go underground, they go off planet, all types. So even though we've been going through cycles, not every human that's been a part of the cycles always fell victim to the cycle. Some of them broke free from it. And so my feelings are that instead of like going through forgetfulness all over again, 13,000 years, that we are going to get to a point where we continue evolving forward and interacting with the rest of the galaxy. Break
Okay.
free from the
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. But do you see the population growing or declining? I'm just very curious.
I haven't really thought about it, but I don't see it declining. Don't see it declining.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
And
there
then
is a lot more space on the planet. Like with the borders and the way things are, yes, right now we need borders and things because we're not at the consciousness in order to be able to basically have abundance for everyone all over the planet,
right.
right? But there will be a day where we get to that point.
And then as far as like the diversity of, like, the
So
uniqueness of the diversity
let's
of
talk
planet
about that.
Earth.
That's something I also thought about too. Like Earth, there's so many species here, like tens and tens of hundreds of thousands of species on Earth, not just humans as one species with all this diversity, but all these other animals. And we talk about these planets, we talk about the Arcturians and other beings, and I've attended hundreds of channeling events, and I've asked questions to many channelers about what the planets look like, who's on there. And quite often you get like very few races of beings there,
Right,
or if they're in a higher dimensional state, it's just them, right?
right.
And having the experience. So it I feel that Earth is basically the Library of Alexander of DNA in the galaxy.
Mm,
That many different because the trauma of the galactic trauma is what we occurred is actually stored in that genetics. And to get over galactic speciesism, galactic racism, to learn how to live in peace with other species, and most of these species are connected to other beings in the galaxy. So that's one aspect of diversity. Now
yeah.
when it comes to diversity within humans, You gotta look at the ancient Indian text and the ancient Sumerian text. It straight up tells you the different ETs, the Anunnaki and Elohim. Well, the Elohim has been used in so many different ways: positive Elohim, negative Elohim. Earth was split up between the different chiefs of these extraterrestrial civilizations, and different genetic manipulations occurred with different areas of humans with different extraterrestrial DNA around the planet. So I feel that the reason why we have such diversity, especially when it comes to Asian people in the East compared to the West, has to do with the different types of DNAs we were mixed with extraterrestrial DNA. It's my
Wow.
personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
intuitively, I would completely agree. Amazing.
So I don't know if you ever heard about the Steve Bassett did the congressional hearings on UFO before they became like mainstream this last couple of years.
Hmm.
Or in 2001, Stephen Gray did it. In 2008 or something like that, Steve Bassett did it. But what they did was they hired ex-Congress members. They paid them all $5,000 each, right, to
Hmm.
do a mock hearing in Washington D.C. on ETs and UFOs. So these are all Congress members that just got out of office last year, right?
Yeah.
And so they're doing this whole thing where they're doing a whole hearing with them just to have these people that were and are connected to politicians know about this stuff. They had the Ministry of Defense in from Canada there, Paul Hellyer, who was a really huge proponent in our community and was speaking on my platform as well. Nick Pope, all these people, Daniel Sheehan, Grant Cameron. And then they also had the Minister of Defense, the current Minister of Defense in China. And the Minister of Defense in China went up on the freaking stand and said the Chinese government has evidence to suggest and are in communication with a race of dragons that have genetic connections to the Chinese people.
Holy crap.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it should have been
Could
bigger than
that
it
be
was.
why, like, there's so much lore in the East with dragons and not in the West, really?
100%, dude. Yeah.
Whoa. That's wild.
And then it gets metaphysical and metaphorical. The dragons, the Kundalini energy, the dragons, the underworld, the darkness, not being able to face it. The Western
Right.
world slay the dragon, slay the enlightenment. The Eastern world
Ah.
embracing it.
Oh my God. One last like huge question. Um, do you believe in this theory, this idea that the Milky Way has said, Sasufi, that's enough, no more darkness, like the experiment of allowing this virus of dark energy that, the Draconians maybe have been the best at kind of harnessing and using for evil is done, and it's going back to kind of just the original template of the Milky Way, which was just light. What are your thoughts on that theory?
That's a very loaded question too. That's a whole conference, really. To speak about that.
So
Because
much of this, yeah, is like,
yeah, like the what I like to say is like we all came from the singularity, the oneness, right? Quantum physics and metaphysics, the same thing. Metaphysics, oneness; quantum physics, singularity. The singularity burst in singularity burst into infinite matter to create the physical universe, right? In metaphysics, the oneness burst into infinite possibilities. One's metaphorical, one's scientific. The exact same thing, infinite possibilities. When the singularity split into duality, it was darkness and light. Also, and do you think that the singularity judged one part of itself more than the
no,
other,
which
or
is
left
why
it
I've
so?
actually had trouble with the theory that the Milky Way is the only galaxy in existence that has darkness. I've never bought that.
Right,
It doesn't make sense
right.
to me.
Because when we get so the darkness, space is dark, black hole is dark.
Right.
The darkness is way beyond evil and bad. The
Yeah.
darkness is this bounce. But as we sources, my opinion here, so sources original blueprint was experience myself infinitely in all ways possible. Let's do it. And here's the free will for you beings to choose your own intentions and agendas on that reality. And then we started imposing good and bad. The lower and lower we got, the lower darkness and light became, they started becoming good and evil in this reality. And now we polarized it in specific ways. So maybe we might shift out of like evil as we know it, and the atrocities on the planet. And instead of looking at it as darkness being completely gone, because darkness goes beyond good and evil, I feel what may be in the works is harmony compared to disharmony, right?
Amazing.
The universe getting into that point. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm of the theory that the Milky Way is actually shifting to complete light. It's just that if it's happening, it doesn't mean it's literally in this moment. This could take thousands of years more in our experience of time, and we're just experiencing this, very important, point of necessary ascension, like that our planet, is at that point where it's now or never, it's do or die, because like if not, we're going to get kind of completely overtaken by the dark again and then have to try again, right?
Dude, this goes deep into like we have another conversation about this, but dimensions, how long does duality go for? Does duality represent darkness and light? Is that the duality within that, So yeah,
Crazy stuff.
it's just so beautiful to kind of explore and to look into.
Even though we only have a few minutes, Neil, I have to show
Yeah,
my audience your chart. I hope you don't mind.
sure, go
Holy crumb, are you Scorpio AF? Jesus Christ. Look at this. Oh my God. This stellium here, Jupiter, Mercury, the Sun, and Venus all in Scorpio. You're a handful,
bro.
sir. But I mean, geez, it just makes you a digger to the ultimate degree, just wanting to figure out everything. Very strong Orion energy in you, I can tell from your chart. Very, very strong Orion energy. And then Pluto, you were born when Pluto conjunct Saturn. Unfortunately, people born around that time were going to have major tragedies in their life, or major, really dark things to deal with, because that's a really difficult conjunction to be born under, Pluto and Saturn. We had a Pluto and Saturn conjunction around the time, around the COVID time as well, right? So that's a rough one. But look, trining your North Node, again, it being the catalyst, all the darkness you've been through, and like any sort of odd extraterrestrial or spiritual experiences, demons, grays, whatever you've encountered over your time, it propels you forward literally in the direction of becoming the teacher that you're meant to become. Cancer is that teacher and caretaker and healer, and the 10th house here is the house of your public image and teaching that to the world. So amazing. I'd love to get into your chart further, maybe one-on-one sometime if you're interested, but just so much Pluto energy you carry, which is, I think, why you and I connect very easily.
Yeah. Dude, in Vedic astrology, I'm a quadruple Scorpio.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's all that Plutonian energy, which is the digger, the seeker, and again, very much connected to Orion. In at least in Western astrology, Pluto is connected to Orion. It is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So amazing. Neil, Portal to Ascension, the website, portal2ascension.org. All the other links are below. And Neil, there's just so many online and in-person conferences covering a myriad of topics like you heard today. Check out Portal to Ascension. Neil, thank you so much. This was just
Thank you, brother.
mind-blowing. I wish we had like 5 more hours, but I thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
All right. Blessings.
The world is changing faster than ever before. And within this evolution, a new consciousness is rising. At the New Living Expo, thousands gather to expand consciousness, explore new conscious technologies, ancient wisdom, and the future of human potential. Immerse yourself in 3 days of heart-expanding wisdom and mind-binding awareness, with over 90 speakers sharing tools to awaken your highest potential. 125 exhibitors, 3,000 attendees, awakened souls unite in one powerful weekend of learning, healing, and connection. Experience transformation, connection, and the next chapter of human evolution. It is time for humanity to awaken. Join us at newlivingexpo.com.